Well, welcome to City Hall. We'll get started this morning with our invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Reverend Thomas Matthew of the First India Pentecostal Church of God is here to lead us in the invocation. Afterwards, I'll ask Councilman Skip Kelly to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and draw attention to the fact that it's Councilman Kelly's birthday. Would everyone please stand?
Shall we bow our heads and pray? Eternal God, Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day and the brand new year that you've given to us. We praise you, Lord, for the opportunity to seek your face, even in this first council meeting in this brand new year 2011. We lift our eyes towards the hills, from where cometh our help. Our help comes from the Lord of hosts, who made heaven and earth. Father, your word says that blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people that you have chosen. Lord, we thank you for the people that you have chosen and placed in the position of leadership in Oklahoma City to lead this city. We pray for the mayor, vice mayor, and the council members and the staff of the mayor's office. We pray for a special touch and a special blessings upon their lives to be fruitful servants. At this time, I, as your servant, seek your special blessings upon the meeting of the city council. I pray that you will grant them your wisdom, direction, and insight into issues as they deliberate and make decisions. I also ask you, Lord, that every decision that make here will be in the best interest of the city and the nation at large. Grant them the necessary grace and strength to be effective servants. This I pray in the name of our Savior and your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Being the first council meeting of the new year, it gives us the opportunity to honor our employees of the year, and the South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club helps us do that. We will start with our South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club Police Officer of the Year. I'll ask Katie Lawson to come forward. Katie, as she's walking up, you may remember she was earlier honored this year as a Employee of the Month, and Katie was injured in the line of duty and is recovering now and hopes to return to the line of duty here very, very shortly. But we have a resolution. I'll ask the clerk to read it.
Whereas Katie Lawson has been a city employee for 4 years and is a police officer in the Will Rogers Division of the Police Department. Whereas on August 29, 2010, after assisting Oklahoma County deputies with a DUI suspect, Officer Lawson was stopped on North Miller filling out her activity sheet when she noticed a man standing across the street with his back to her. Whereas Officer Lawson notified dispatch of the situation and then proceeded to exit her vehicle, the man turned and began firing on Officer Lawson with an assault rifle. Whereas Officer Lawson managed to get out of her vehicle, draw her service weapon, and return fire, causing the suspect to retreat. Officer Lawson, even though injured by gunfire in the leg, torso, and face, attempted to pursue the suspect, but was prevented from doing so because her injuries were too severe for her to give chase. Whereas Officer Katie Lawson retrieved her portable radio and with an amazingly calm voice broadcast the suspect's description, direction of travel, and requested help. Officers who first arrived on the scene relayed that Officer Lawson was still on her feet and trying to give information that would help other responding personnel. Whereas Officer Kate Lawson's actions most likely saved the lives of the Oklahoma County deputies who were still on their traffic stop in the area. Had she not engaged the suspect when she did, he may have attacked the deputies while they were in a defenseless position. She exhibited exceptional bravery at an imminent risk of serious injury to herself. Whereas this council desires to recognize Officer Katie Lawson for her bravery, dedication, professionalism, and commitment to the citizens of Oklahoma City, Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby thank and commend Officer Katie Lawson, 2010 South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club Police Officer of the Year.
I bet we can get a motion in a second for this. We're obviously very proud, but for the record, we will have to cast votes to approve the resolution. So cast your votes, Council. And it is unanimous. Katie, we are so proud to have you as a member of our force.
Thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here, and thank you all very much and to the Kiwanis Club for this award. I appreciate it greatly. Thank you.
And we look forward to having you back on the force very, very shortly. Congratulations with your excellent rehabilitation schedule.
Thank you.
All right. Yes.
I just hope the citizens of Oklahoma City realize how fortunate they are to have people like Katie Lawson representing the police department. We're a better, safer city because of people like Katie Lawson, and I think this tribute is well-deserved. The recognition is for unbelievable bravery is just remarkable. And you can read history a lot, which I do, and you find examples of heroism all over the map, and this ranks up there right above with all of them. I think it's just great that we've been able to do this recognition.
Agreed, Pat. Thank you for pointing that out. And now, to recognize our Oklahoma City Firefighter of the Year, let me ask Russell Burkhalter to come forward. And as we get ready, I'll ask the clerk to read the resolution honoring him as our Oklahoma City South Kiwanis Club Firefighter of the Year.
Whereas Major Russell Burkhalter has been a city employee for 20 years and is a firefighter in the suppression division of the fire department. Whereas Major Burkhalter is truly concerned for his fellow firefighters, he constantly strives to instill confidence in his crew and consistently displays professionalism and motivates others by his actions. Whereas Major Burkhalter was put to an extreme test this past year by making quick decisions and was instrumental in saving a firefighter's life. Whereas Major Burkhalter received a call that a firefighter was in peril at one of his stations, he immediately responded and while en route learned that the firefighter was in cardiac arrest. Whereas Major Burkhalter requested an air ambulance, arranged to get the firefighter's wife to the hospital, and even assisted with emergency care because he was the only paramedic on the scene at the time. Whereas Major Burkhalter on another incident showed quick thinking when a man threatened to jump from the Lake Hefner Parkway overpass at Northwest 63rd, and through his concerted efforts with police on the scene, Major Burkhalter was able to pull the man from the ledge of the bridge before he could jump. Whereas Major Russell Burkhalter is well respected by those who have had the pleasure to work with him, in his unshakable leadership and coolness under extreme conditions are second to none. Whereas this council desires to recognize Major Russell Burkhalter for his commitment, dedication to his profession, and the safety of the citizens of Oklahoma City. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby thank and commend Major Russell Burkhalter, 2010 South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club Firefighter of the Year.
How about a motion in a second? Let's cast our votes and show our appreciation to Major Burkhalter. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank the Southside Kiwanis Club, the City Council, and the command staff of Oklahoma City Fire Department for the way they display themselves professionally, and I'm very grateful.
And the citizens of Oklahoma City are fortunate to have men and women like you. Thank you very much. One more round of applause for Major Burkhalter. And our third and final Employee of the Year, honored by the South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club, is Larry Malkowski. Larry is a civilian employee with the fire department. Larry, come on up. I'll ask the clerk to read this resolution.
Whereas Larry Malkowski has been a city employee for 9 years and is a field operations supervisor in the fleet maintenance section, support services division of the fire department. Whereas Larry Malkowski is a good steward of city resources who diligently researches vendors' prices and services to find the best buys for parts and services for use by city employees and does not settle for mediocre parts or services. Whereas Larry handles the city's money as if it were his own and takes personal responsibility to spend it wisely, thus saving the city and citizens thousands of dollars. Whereas Larry uses a Pro Card to purchase large amounts of parts and services each month, he regularly reviews and notices any discrepancies between his bank statement and the Pro Card statement. Recently, he was instrumental in identifying and correcting a problem with the city's Pro Card purchasing system. Whereas Larry Malkowski is a behind-the-scenes person who quietly does an important job supporting firefighters, mechanics, and co-workers so they can provide excellent service to the citizens of Oklahoma City. Whereas Larry Malkowski's work ethic, dependability, honesty, and stewardship are exemplary and have earned him not only the respect of his customers and co-workers, but that of city vendors as well. Whereas this council desires to recognize Larry Malkowski for his dedication, professionalism, and commitment to the citizens of Oklahoma City. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City do hereby thank and commend Larry Malkowski, 2010 South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club Employee of the Year.
Larry, congratulations. How about a motion in a second? Cast your votes, and let's show our appreciation. Larry, this is quite an honor. Congratulations.
I'd like to thank the South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club and the City Council and everybody that was involved with this, and the fire department for giving me the opportunity to work with them and earn this award. Thank you very much.
Larry, you represent us well. Thanks again and congratulations. Let's show our appreciation to all three. You have some great employees, Mr. City Manager.
We do indeed.
We're on item 4 of the council agenda. This is the Journal of Council Proceedings. I'll look for a motion to pass item A and B. This is to receive the Journal of Council Proceedings for December 21st and approve the Journal of Council Proceedings for December 14th. Second. Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the Journal? All right, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. On to item 5. This is request for uncontested continuances.
Mr. Mayor, I have several this morning, starting on page 5 on the consent docket under item 6D1. That's PC 10264. Staff requests this item be stricken to allow the applicant time to submit an amended legal description. The legal description's wrong on it. And on item 6D1, SP 425, staff requests that this item also be stricken to allow the applicant time to submit an amended legal description. On to page 14, under item 8A, 8A1, we ask that be deferred 1 week until January 11th. There's a problem with the easement, and we'll get that easement here next week. And then on to page 15, under item 8D1B, 2112 North Lottie. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has removed. Item G, 2205 Northeast 14th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has removed. And then under item 8F1E, 3720 North Pennsylvania. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. On to page 16, item G, 1904 Northwest 7th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. 3812 Northwest 11th Street, item H. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item J, 3308 Northeast 13th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item K, 2221 Southwest 20th. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item L, 2232 Southwest 22nd Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. And item M, 2512 Southwest 22nd Street. We ask that be stricken. We need to re-notify on that item.
All right, any other requests for uncontested continuances? We'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. Looks like there are 5 items. Okay, comments or questions on the MFA? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Adjourn OCMFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. There are 4 items. Okay, comments or questions on the MFA? I'm sorry, the PPA. All right, cast your votes. PPA passes unanimously. Adjourn OCPPA, convene as the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust. There is 1 item. Comments or questions on the EAT? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCEAT and reconvene the council meeting with the consent docket. All right, are there any individual considerations? Sam? All right. Sam, you want to go ahead and get started?
Thank you, Mayor. I's question of information. It's a contract with the City County Health Department. Contract allows Oklahoma City Health Department to provide inspections prior to issuance of business licenses, which we've been doing. And City Manager, the new contract allows County Health Department to issue city special event licenses. Just some information as to what that
help
is.
us out?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
This is on the licensing contract with the City County Health Department, Bob. The new contract allows them to issue city special event licenses. What are they doing that they haven't been doing?
On any special event, in the past, they've gone out and done an inspection, and then we've followed up and issued the license. And now they'll actually issue the license for us and collect the money, and we won't have to send the staff out in the field. It was really it's a result of an audit that was done earlier, because there wasn't any reason to send 2 different inspectors out to do basically the same thing, because all we were doing is collecting the fee and issuing the license. We weren't doing any inspection. So this way, City County Health will do it all. They'll do the inspection, they'll collect our fee. They also already collect the fee for the state. So it's just it's streamlining the operations, making it more efficient.
And again, Bob, this is a result of an audit that was done.
A result of the audit,
months ago.
licensing audit that showed that there was an inefficiency there. And we'll monitor it and make sure that they get the fees and they cover all the events. But what it'll do for us, it will keep, but most of these events are either on the weekend or after hours, and we have to send out people overtime, and that will eliminate that. We'll still do the fair when that comes up, but these are for the other types of special events.
So that any complaints, citizen complaints, would go directly to them. We wouldn't.
Well, and it typically does that anyway, because they're doing the actual inspection. All we were really doing is issuing the license and collecting the fee.
Okay.
And that would be an assumption that the complaint comes there. We seem to get a lot of complaints that come in. We seem to be a catch-all for a lot of the complaints. Maybe or maybe not.
Thank you, Bob. Mayor, the other item has to do with just to compliment the founders, people that landscape improvement and maintenance agreement, United Founders Building, with regards to taking on the medians, both on the United Founders Boulevard and Mosteller Drive. I don't think anybody's here representing them. Just complimenting them for taking this on. That's a median I've been called about on a couple of occasions in the last year. It's just become a bit unsightly and weeds overtaking some of the grass. But I brought this up not only to compliment the Founders Building, Mayor, but I'd like to see us, again, we've looked at this before, but all the maintenance agreements we have on either parks or boulevards come at the overture, the initiative of the party, the business or the neighborhood association. I'd just like to see us looking, again, some way perhaps to incentivize at the front end some of the work. For instance, sprinkler system, the irrigation system, or some of the front end labor to get the site prepared for whatever planning might be. And then the maintenance agreement would take care of the recurring cost, and that would be the responsibility of the again, neighborhood group or business group. I know some of these things get into some expense that we want to, we're a little bit cautious about getting into, but I think the recurring expense is the real issue for us. And if we can find some ways to just do some of the front-end work, I just think we'd have a lot more partnerships and a lot more beautification with respect to our boulevards and parks, rather than just waiting on that business that comes to us, because that's how we get these, their overture, and that's fine. I mean, they do the work, they assume you see it in all these maintenance agreements. They put the planning in, they put the trees in, whatever they put in, and they maintain it as well. The responsibility of the long-term recurring cost, it should continue to be a concern of the city, and I don't even suggest we get into that. But I just think incentivizing some of the front-end cost might get us a lot further down the road with some of these beautification efforts than just, again, waiting for someone to take the initiative. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Pete?
Before we leave the consent docket, I'd like to talk about AG.
Okay.
This is the old armory that's on Southwest 44th Street, right there with you. It's part of Young's Park, actually. I'd like to know, not today, obviously, but some kind of a long-term plan for what we plan to do with it. First, I'd like to know what to the extent to which they think there's hazardous materials there, and second, some kind of a long-term plan. It fronts on 44th Street. The property itself might be valuable to put back on the tax rolls. I'm not sure there's much. I don't see how it's going to be used very well with the park part of it, but possibly. But just some long-term plan for not letting that building sit idle. It's got some utility, and it's well located for somebody.
I agree with that. We don't have a plan at this point in time. It's going to come back to us, but we'd be happy to talk with you and help develop a good reuse.
Mayor?
Yes, Skip?
I apologize. I would like to, I believe there's a representative for, on AB. It's the residential project on Northeast 2nd and Northeast 3rd. And I would just like, because it's a rather unique commitment that they have made in reference to their request for this TIF program, and if there's a representative here, I would like for them to just give just a brief outline of what the proposed project is.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Richard McCowan with City Center Development, 4409 Cannon Drive. Happy birthday, Councilman Kelly, Mayor, fellow council members. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here today. Our unique proposition with our TIF funding request for our building, different than my understanding of many of the previous TIF funding projects that have come before you. We are not requesting that any funds be released until we have fulfilled all of our commitments. And the nature of those commitments are we're going to build the building, completely establish its new assessed value, which would be, and attach that to a covenant, deed restriction rather, that would establish a minimum value of $18 million, which would guarantee a repayment of, over the remaining life of the TIF, of an estimated $2.8 million. So we're essentially guaranteeing the city's $1.25 million investment in the property. We're guaranteeing the repayment of that at least to the $2.8 million. And we are not asking for that funding to be released to us until we've paid the first year's taxes at the new assessed value. And so also we're agreeing to a percentage of occupancy of the building before the TIF funds would be released. Those are the broad outlines of the project. This has been like running a marathon. We're at mile 25. We're getting awfully close to the finish line. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Richard. I would like to say that this is a continued growing commitment for developers to look at an area that has been way underserved for years and is becoming a bright spot in one part of our city, in the northeast quadrant of our city. And so I support the project. I think it's a very great improvement as far as development and housing that is a residential center for individuals in the area, and I think it will be a major improvement in addition to the other improvements that are presently in the deep-deuced area. So, thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming down.
Mayor, in light of the recent attention that's been brought to the TIFs, both positive and negative, one of the things that I discovered in reading the newspaper articles that have been in the paper recently about it is that I didn't know as much about how all that works as I thought I did. And I'd like some kind of a white paper, maybe just no more than a couple of pages, about how the process works and what happens on the downside. We all know what happens when it works well. What I'm concerned about is I didn't know, and I don't know yet, exactly what the ramifications are when one of them doesn't do well.
We'd be happy to. How about if we do a presentation to council?
That's fine.
In the next couple of weeks.
And maybe if I'm the only one that needs it, well, you can just give it to me. But I, as I read through it, I thought I understood it pretty well. And the more I read about it, the less I know about how it works if it doesn't work well. I thought our staff did a good job of talking about it to the newspaper, but it wasn't very illuminating for someone of my advanced years.
I think that'd be a really good idea. We'd be happy to do that. There are risks associated with TIFs. We try to minimize them. I think Oklahoma City has been very conservative on our approach on TIFs, and I think it'd be good for us to come back and explain
all of that.
What our backstops are and how we do that. That'd be great.
Yeah, all of that I agree with. I'm just not quite sure I have my arms around exactly what happens. One thing I would say as I look at these projects, especially those that go along Walnut Street, is this is exactly what the black community predicted would happen 25 years ago. This is exactly the kind of development they foresaw. It is development that is not for low-income people. It's for high-income people in an area that was formerly the home of the black community in Oklahoma City. They foresaw this as development for other people, and that's exactly the kind of development that's happened. They were very prophetic 25 years ago about what they saw would happen when all this property was taken away and to be redeveloped. And that I having been here and listened to that, I can't help but comment on the fact that they knew exactly what was going to happen in the early 80s.
Larry?
Just a question, Richard, if you would, and maybe I'm on the wrong wavelength, but is this particular development here is not high-end property? Is it as far as who would be available, who would be served by this complex when it's built out?
Thank you, Councilman McAtee. That is an excellent question. It's a very nice project we're building. It is an efficient project. Many of the apartment units are not very large. I mean, they're nice and spacious and open. There's no wasted space. They're excellent. But they're not that expensive relative to a lot of the for sale property that's been built. New construction is expensive. Urban construction is prohibitively expensive. To do something that's an urban proposition that has a structured parking garage sets this property into it's simply 20% more expensive to build comparable apartments to suburban comparable apartments, and it really does boil down to the density of building the parking for retail, rebuilding the parking for along the street. There's so many moving parts to it. But that said, the target market is for single people. As we've done our research, the single-person household in America today now is 25% of the households in America. When young people and people who are empty nesters or tired of living in the suburbs and who are single, find themselves single for whatever reason, want to move back down to the community to plug in, it's not necessarily an ethnic group. It is not necessarily a displacement or a gentrification process as much as it is when you look at building nice new buildings that meet all of the objectives that we as a city have for urban redevelopment. You land at a project like this that is affordable in one sense. I mean, our rental rates are going to be between $850 a month to $1,500 a month for our most high-end units, but that's not over the top in terms of new for rent. What would be, I believe, prohibitive would be one-bedroom apartments that were in excess of $1,100 a month, which there are examples of that would be targeted at the very high end. Apologize for the long answer, but I hope that's a little bit clarifying.
That is helpful. Thank you. Ready to vote the consent docket? All right, cast your votes. Consent docket passes unanimously. Move on to the concurrence docket. All right, is there any individual consideration on the concurrence docket? All right, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We move on to item 8. These are items that require a separate vote. We start with a series of zoning cases. The first is in Ward 6. The address is 1633 Northwest 2nd Street. It's currently R2 medium low density residential, and it would become an I1 light industrial district.
That's been deferred a week, Mayor. 881.
And this item has been deferred 1 week. And so the new date will be January 11th, 2011. All right. On to item 8A2. This is a zoning case in Ward 8. The address is 14117 North Rockwell Avenue. It's currently a planned unit development, and it would become a new PUD. Pat?
Thank you, Your Honor. Excuse me. This is an apartment complex development north of Memorial and west of Rockwell in an area that's developing rapidly along the turnpike. There were no protests at the Planning Commission level. The Planning Commission unanimously approved this project. And did anybody sign up to speak on it? Okay. We have representatives of the owners here if there are any questions. If there are no questions, I would move approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on item 8A2? All right, cast your votes. It passed unanimously.
Your Honor, I would also like to request the emergency on this project.
All right.
Some financing opportunities.
We have a motion and a second on the emergency on item 8A2. Cast your votes on the emergency, and it passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We're on to item 8A3. This is a zoning case in Ward 1 at 4810 Northwest 39th Street. It's currently R1 single-family residential, I1 light industrial, and I2 moderate industrial districts, and they put it together into a new SPUD. Gary?
Anybody signed up to speak on this?
No one has signed up.
Okay. Do we have all the TEs agreed to, Bob? Okay, I'll move approval.
We have a motion and a second on item 8A3. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 8B is to expand the city in Ward 8. Ward 8 wasn't big enough, so we've decided to make it a little bit larger. Yeah.
Mayor, the planning director has a brief presentation on this morning.
It's a power grab.
Russell, do you want to explain the annexation?
Unfortunately, there are more acres than there are voters in that piece.
Well, that could change one day. Good morning, Mayor and Council. This request comes about as a result of an existing general obligation bond project to improve the road at 192nd Street. Our corporate limit only went to the center of the road there, and in negotiations with the property owners on the north side of the road outside the city limit, they felt that in order to be able to offer that additional right-of-way that was required to make the road improvements, they would like to be annexed into the city. And so they offered their consent for the road improvements and the right-of-way required for that on the condition that we annex the remainder of that property. Fortunately, there were only a couple of property owners there. The majority of that quarter section is owned by one property owner, and so we were able to come to an agreement which saves us a considerable amount of money for that acquisition by including the entire quarter section. And this map illustrates where that is. It's, of course, on our far northern boundary on the east side of Portland. Portland is a state highway and is designated for improvements in the future, so we will not run into any issues in regard to the issue we're currently facing on 192nd Street, where we only go to the center of the roadway there. So that is the proposal there. You can see there's some development immediately to the south. The land will come into the city as as agricultural land. All the land around it is currently zoned either R1 or a PUD with an R1 overlay on it. And this has been to the Planning Commission. They approved this on November the 18th. This was introduced to Council on December the 14th, and this is the final hearing today. The Annexation De-Annexation Committee considered this in May and in November and voted to approve the annexation. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Comments or questions from Council?
You know, I have a comment, and it has to do with the extension of services. It seems to me that you would not see this kind of and I'm in favor of annexing it. We've already invested millions of dollars in making sure that water was available to it. I represent literally thousands of acres where there's been no investment in water, no investment in city services at all, other than, I say no, I mean that, I'm talking about in the ground services. I'm not talking about police and fire and that kind of thing. It's easy to see why an area like this would want to come in, and why areas that I represent tend to want to get out. And it has to do with the fact that infrastructure drives people's desire to be part of the city. If we have totally decided not to extend infrastructure in the southeast part of Oklahoma City, and to a large extent in the northeast part of Oklahoma City, and we've extended it. I mean, sometimes I think I live way out in the country at 134th and Henney Road. That's really no farther out in the country than 192nd in Portland. But the major difference is at 192nd in Portland, there's water. And that's what drives development. And I'm not so sure that overall, over the long pool, we ought to take another look at whether or not we intend to extend this kind of services to every area of the city. And if we don't, we ought to look at de-annexing some of the areas that we don't intend to serve. There are some opportunities right now in southeast Oklahoma City to bring services, and the resistance to that from planning is, well, you know, if we do that, people are going to want to build there. Well, no kidding. I mean, why does this quarter section want to come in right across the street from where development already occurred, 100 miles from nowhere, no further than the areas that I represent, no further. But the difference is we put infrastructure in the ground there. And you know, the idea that all infrastructure is paid for by those people that live there, I doubt the people on the north side of this road paid for this water infrastructure that's there. I paid for it. You paid for it. Everybody in this room paid for it. And yet it's going to benefit just a select group of people that were, because it's in northwest Oklahoma City. I'm not making this a north-south thing. I'm making it a rural-urban comment. If we don't intend to advance infrastructure into the ground, we ought to give folks the opportunity to talk about not being part of the city. Because I don't know, I don't know where we're going with this. I mean, it seems to me we're unlimited in how far we'll go northwest. And we will not take water another 50 feet east. I mean, we have transmission lines that run down Douglas that it would be simple to extend water to the east, and yet we don't. That's not in the plan. But you go northwest, and it is in the plan. And I think that's something we ought to think about. If that's going to be our policy, well, then that ought to be our policy. But people ought to know that. People ought to know that water's never coming, or that just set tight and water will come, because you can develop your quarter section if it's 192nd in Portland, and you're going to be sitting on it if it's at 134th and Henny. Just a personal comment.
All right. Any other comments or questions on Russell's proposal here? All right. We have a motion. How about a second? Cast your votes on the annexation. It passes unanimously. On to item 8C, it's a no parking anytime sign. It's in Ward 2. Sam, you okay with this?
This is at the request of residents on the east side of the Chesapeake campus, just to give them better access in and out. Move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 8C. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8D is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8D? No one has signed up? All right, how about a motion then? Yeah, Larry?
Well, after the motion, I would like Charles to come forward. I'd like to ask him a question about one of the units on this at the appropriate time.
Charles is here now.
If I could indulge the council for just a moment. On item 8D, item D, 1701 North Sapulpa Avenue, this has been a challenged property for a number of years, and we have a number of residents in the area who are possibly watching our council hearing this morning. And I'd just like Charles, if he could, to very quickly tell these folks what can be expected once we vote this to be dilapidated today, what they can expect to happen in the ensuing time.
Well, the owners will basically be notified, of the council's decision. They'll have 30 days in which to bring forth a plan to either rehab the property, correct the problems, or we'll start the bid process and demolition after that 30 days. Probably you're looking at least probably a couple of months down the line before, the city would be able to obtain the permits and remove the property.
So this is the first start in getting the ball rolling, and they shouldn't see demolition equipment out there tomorrow or even next week or even probably next month.
That's correct. We have to give the owners 30 days in which to basically come back to the city to give us a plan to, save the property. If that happens, we'll work with the owner. If it doesn't happen, we'll move forward with demolition.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, council.
We're voting on dilapidated structures. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8E is a public hearing regarding a dilapidated structures. Happens to be in an HP landmark district in Ward 6. Any comments or questions, or anyone here wishing to speak in this item? Yeah, please come forward. All right.
If that's reasonable. If not, then I'll be quiet.
Okay. Is there any comments or questions or reason to engage him in any further conversation? Have a motion?
I have a statement that I've written that I could pass out to everybody.
Well, let me see if that's. Does any council member wish to see the statement or want any justification on it?
It's pretty simple and straightforward.
Are we ready to vote? Okay, why don't you pass it out?
Okay.
Or while he's doing that, what is the process for the dilapidated and historical preservation? Is it the same as the regular dilapidated, or is the same?
Charles, can you answer that question?
It's basically the same. It does go through a hearing first, but basically it's the same.
May I read this statement?
Yes. We will need your name and address, Paul, for the record.
Paul Gill, 624 Northwest 18th, City, 73103-1825. Shall I go ahead and read? It's short.
Okay.
I regret postponing needed repairs to my garage and access area to my garage apartment. It is my sincere intent to accomplish the needed repairs as quickly as possible. Carpenter and builder Bob Gresham has assessed the area needing work and has agreed to do the work. Last night, I began removing loose boards from the side of the stairs and removed miscellaneous items from under the stairs and porch. I will continue removing the boards in order to facilitate the rebuilding of the stairs and porch and boards which need replacing. Right away, I expect to receive from Mr. Gresham a written declaration of his intent to complete the project and will forward a copy of it to the Development Department.
Okay. Thanks, Paul, for coming down.
Thank you.
We ready to vote? How about a motion? Okay. Second? All right. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on to item 8F. It's a public hearing regarding unsecured structures. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under item 8F? Has anyone signed up to speak? All right. How about a motion? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Mayor, I'd just like to make sure Mr. Gill understands what happened. Do you know what?
I read the agenda and the minutes, and the agenda and the proposed wording. And am I understanding correctly that if I present a plan with sincere intent and the reparations for it to be completed, that possibly even a little bit more time might be allowed besides the month if I am going to seek some financial help through the historical preservation methods that they have available?
Yes, that is my understanding.
It's actually more than presenting a plan. They need to see work progressing. As long as you're doing work on the building and keeping in touch with city staff on it, then no further action will be taken. But if we don't see any work at all, 30 days from now, we'll take action on it.
Okay. And item 8G, workers' compensation claim. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8H is claims recommended for denial. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8H? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 9 is claims recommended for approval. Comments or questions? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 10 is items from council. Pat, you want to get us started?
Your Honor, I'd just like to reinforce a point I've made earlier in my career on the council. Excuse me, it's a result of having the awards today of the 3 employees of the year. And I think the citizens of Oklahoma City ought to be made aware of the fact that they are getting a real bargain. They've got great people from the very top job in the city all the way down to the most menial kind of work. They're getting excellent people working for them. People are dedicated, committed, and well-trained, and really, I think, a bargain for what they pay for them. I just wanted to make that point.
I'm glad you did. Skip? All right, Brian? Pete? All right, Larry? Sam?
Jim, are you going to talk about general obligation bond sale? I had a comment on that, but...
Yes, sir. You want to do it now?
I take it this is going to be, it's a little less than we had hoped, but it's going to be more than streets.
Well, what we're saying here on the GO bonds is the fact that because of the recession, excuse me, we've had positive growth in property values over the last few years, but not to the level that we'd anticipated when we passed the bond issue back in 2007. We'd historically seen about a 6% increase. Now, that 6% increase isn't just valuation. It's a combination of both valuation, increase in valuation, and growth within the system. And so we've historically seen about a 6% increase. And so we've done our estimates for that in 2007 based upon that percent increase. Within the last couple of years, we've seen lower increases than that. It's been positive, but not to the levels as anticipated. So because of that, where we've been having $60 to $70 million sales, we actually think that we actually originally valued this at $37 million for this next year, which would be a fairly small sale. We're suggesting that we take a little bit more aggressive approach in our estimates, and because of that, I think we said $42 or $43 million would be our sale amount this year. Still less than the 60 to 70 we've been seeing in the past, but a little bit more than 37. And yes, most of it. So it's going to be a small sale. There's not going to be a lot of extra projects, and most of those are monies would be are kind of committed to street projects that we've got going at this point.
Jim, I just asking, even in that size of a bond, it's going to be a preliminary list of projects submitted to council.
Yes.
And generally that means we'll get it the Friday before the Tuesday council meeting. I'd like to just ask that it be a little earlier.
Sure.
In the event that some council have some question about priorities of projects, we'd have an opportunity to discuss with department heads before the
We'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Gary?
Well, just to follow up on that, anybody listening in, this is not to say that all of the projects in the bond package won't get done. They just won't get done maybe as quick as we thought they were going to get done.
This isn't about you're doing the projects. It's when the projects will be done.
Right.
Everything that's listed will be done. It's just that instead of having this be a 7 or 8 year project, it might be a 7.5 or 8.5 year project.
So at the if the let's just say this underachieving prediction continues, the way it will work out is it'll just take longer to do it. I mean, it would a year longer, 2 years longer. I mean,
I don't believe it would be 2 years longer.
No, but I mean theoretically,
yes,
if the performance was not
that's correct
what we want it to be, it wouldn't change the projects at all.
No.
It would change the timing, and that's it. That wouldn't change any more than that.
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
All right, looks like we're on to city manager reports.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We talked about, obviously, the GEO bond sale. The other two items I want to talk about is one, the Skirvin Hotel update. Obviously, it's been about 4 or 5 years since Skirvin's reopened, and we haven't given a recent update, but the bottom line of this is that it is outperforming what our performance were at the time we approved the project. And so it's been a success on really all levels for us on the Skirvin, not only on the perception and things like that, but it's also performing financially better than the assumptions that we had back when we approved the deal back in 2006 or 2005. The other report is a sales.
Before you finish that one, how much better and how long would it have to perform at this level to generate funds to try to consider another project? I know that was a very difficult project and it'd be very hard to ever do another one, but at what point would we, if this one it continues as positive as it has been, because there are other similar places in downtown Oklahoma City that could certainly use a Skirvin application if the funds were available.
Right. I think probably the key event to trigger that would be if sometime that facility were to sell. If they were to sell, then we have some upside potential at that point in time. And if you recall, that was discussed at the time we did that it may turn sometime in the 7 to 12 year life of the project.
So these are in effect marginal. I mean, they're not. It's good that it's much better being this way than the other way. But this is not going to, in and of itself, generate sufficient funding to think about another project of this magnitude unless the Skirvin sells.
At the time Skirvin sells, there will be some funds available. Yes, sir. The other item that's in the package is the December sales and use tax collections. The checks are in. They're obviously still above target. We're doing very well along those lines. But I think it's important to remember that although we're well above 2009 collections at this point in time, if you take a look at where we are compared to 2008, we're really, even with the hailstorm, which I know we're riding that horse a long time, but that did bring in additional revenues undoubtedly earlier in this year. Even with that hailstorm dollars that came in, we're still just a percent or so from where we were in fiscal year or in calendar year 08. So very, very, very close. So yes, it's better, and it looks really good, and I'd much rather have this scenario than any other scenario that's out there. But I think you've got to, I just caution you to look at the big picture, and the big picture is that there was a big dip, and we're not really out of that big dip as of yet. We're close, and we're slightly above it, I guess, if you consider if you don't discount because of the hailstorm. But we've seen positive progress, but we still have challenges ahead.
Okay.
And that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Jim's comments about the hailstorm made me think of an article I read in the paper about a new company that we're getting. Company has bought the Can Company out on Council Road to put in a roofing plant, not only distribution of roofing materials, but actually making roofing materials. And I don't know if it's a good thing that we're getting the new business development or a bad thing that we have so much roofing that goes on in Oklahoma that they need a plant here. But I guess it's a good sign either way.
It's always a good sign that we can backfill an empty industrial property.
I'm just continuing to peruse the numbers. It seems interesting to me that we're just outpacing the other municipalities in the state of Oklahoma by such a large margin. If you look at page 2 on this handout, we're at 14.6% year-to-date percentage change, and it's more than double of the 6 other fairly significant municipalities that are mentioned here. There's some good things going on, and I understand the hailstorm, but I think it's also a lot of the construction business. All the energy companies are expanding their campuses, and things are just better and feel better. Yeah. And to make up that dip in 1 year is pretty astonishing.
Yeah. And it's multifaceted, the recovery. It's national, it's local business, and it's the hailstorm. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. Mm-hmm. So, cautiously optimistic.
All right. We have a couple of people that have signed up to speak. Nick Roberts. Nick, good morning. We will need your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Nick Roberts, 3101 Vinehaven. I might go about half a minute long. If I do, just cut me short. Okay. While I don't get to stay home year-round, witnessing our city's progress is always a highlight of the months I do get to come home, and I certainly owe a huge thank you to all of you, as do about 560,000 other people in county. I do understand that we're on the brink of having a streetcar route in order to realize planning efficiencies with the Project 180 timeline. To address some of the serious concerns about the streetcar investment, particularly the cost of the system, I think an explanation is needed to ascertain the $20 million a mile figure. In the last 10 years, there have been streetcar systems built for $12 million a mile in Portland, 13 a mile in Tampa, 7 a mile in Little Rock, and even for as low as $2 million a mile for a rail streetcar in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I understand a large portion of the cost estimate is for relocation of underground utilities, and I also understand there are route considerations that could affect the cost. But essentially, this streetcar has the potential to be worth much more to us than it will ever cost us in terms of what it can do for our city and for our downtown. Realistically, with our low density, there is no way to efficiently provide transit to everyone, or even most, effectively. It's imperative to start small and to start in the heart and focus our resources downtown and move out from there. Also, remember that downtown living is currently not meeting expectations or projections. Despite downtown's huge inventory of vacant lots and empty buildings everywhere you look, in the last 5 years, downtown has only yielded hundreds of new residential units, when the 2005 downtown housing study projected downtown could have added in that period between 2250 and 4250. We have to get back on track with development, and streetcar can help us do that more than anything. Every dollar Portland spends on streetcar, it spurs $18 in development. Even if ours is half the catalyst, at least consider it an investment in our inner city schools with the ad valorem tax. When we get caught back up with housing demand, you'll see thousands of people coming out of the woodwork to ride the system at all hours, most notably a lot of whom wouldn't consider themselves willing to be caught dead on a city bus. Also, I believe streetcar and Project 180 will complement each other in ways we'll be astonished by. The streetcar isn't designed to replace short walking trips downtown, but rather to create pedestrian circulation between neighborhoods. They're often called pedestrian extenders because instead of walking 13, 14 blocks from Bricktown to Midtown, you can hop on and hop off and only have to cross 3 or 4 blocks. This makes all of downtown your oyster, an area of more than 2 square miles. A rubber tire trolley cannot meet these goals because it never has in the past. One reason the Oklahoma Spirit trolley has failed is because the route has changed multiple times and its signs and stops have been pulled, making it a phantom system. It's not just saying that we won't change the route anymore, because the route wasn't changed thinking it was a good idea. It was changed because operating costs of the rubber tire trolley were too much. By figures I've seen, a single streetcar may cost $70 an hour in operating costs, whereas a typical city bus will cost over $130 an hour. So it only takes a matter of years for you to break even after the enormous upfront capital expenses of streetcar. Another difference is that people can see the rails in the ground, especially developers, and the wires above the street, and know with absolute certainty that the streetcar will pass here. A bus system lacks that certainty, plus I'm pretty sure there's never been an on-time bus in the city in the last 10 years, and often more than 10 or 15 minutes late. It's for these reasons that for every $18 Oklahoma City can spend on a city bus or a rubber tire trolley, you will see zero in return. We truly have the potential to turn around transit and really turn up the heat downtown with the streetcar we desire. The best Oklahoma City can do with its 621 square miles is to be good stewards of our natural resources, keep building healthy neighborhoods for families, and grow a viable urban inner city in the center. This will provide the residents freedom to choose for themselves their lifestyle and surroundings while keeping the whole city healthy inside and out and light years removed from the 1990s. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for coming down. Jeff Bezdek. Morning, Jeff.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Bezdek, and I'm at 605 Northwest 4th Street. I wish I was nearly as prepared as Nick. It's great to see citizens from our community coming out and speaking on behalf on this issue. I serve on the MAPS 3 Modern Streetcar and Hub Subcommittee and the Alternatives Analysis Committee that's pursuing the federal funding mechanisms. And I just wanted to address you today regarding the comments that were made last week. I've actually wanted to come and extend an invitation to all of the council to be involved in the process. The last thing that our MAPS 3 subcommittee would want to do is show up with a grand presentation and find that we missed the boat. We didn't pursue the areas that you wanted us to pursue or put the emphasis where it needed to be placed. I know Councilwoman Salyer is involved in the Alternatives Analysis Committee. Obviously, the mayor chairs it, and Larry McAtee's on the Oversight Board, and Sam is on the Hub Committee. But, you know, we would love for you to participate in our process. We have 2 meetings in January in which we're going to be trying to narrow down the modern streetcar route. And feel free, you know, if you need a individual meeting that gives you a lot of time. Obviously, it'd be a public meeting, but we want you involved in that process. The second thing I want to say is that because this is a ongoing public process where we are having public meetings and we're trying to get input from the ground up, I mean, what you say from the bench is very critical in how it affects that process. And it affects the volunteers that have put hundreds, if not thousands, of hours into trying to come up with the best transit solution that we can possibly build within MAPS. And so what I've done, and this is something that's already been handed to the subcommittee, but if you distribute these, this is a flow chart that has every single volunteer on all of the committees and how the recommendation process goes on up to council. And this is something that hasn't been, I've never seen it in any comprehensive form, so we had our graphic artist come up with this flow chart. Could you distribute these? So that you understand how many people are involved in the process and how that information flows up through the MAPS Oversight, Citizens Oversight Board on up to council. And that kind of gives you an idea of how large this process is. And I just want to address a couple other things. And very quickly, you know, how did we get where we're at today? The idea of a modern streetcar came from the 2000 Fixed Guideway study. It was an idea that had been created by analysis over a year and a half, and is professional advice. And this is what we call the last mile system. It's the regional distribution system funneling into this circulator. What we did in MAPS was we said, what can we start with in the 2005 fixed guideway study? What can we actually afford to build? And we looked at lines to Edmond, lines to Norman, these various lines that are in fixed guideway study. We looked at buses. And obviously the big problem with any other type of transit that's in the fixed guideway study is it requires interjurisdictional agreements, and it also has a high operating cost. A great example is as Nick was mentioning, and I didn't put him up to coming today, but I'm glad he did, buses cost a lot more to operate. And the streetcar was the one element that we could actually build and have be able to absorb that ongoing operational cost. Now I wanted to talk about the cost per mile. $20 million per mile is a composite estimate of streetcar systems from around the country. It's kind of a middle-of-the-road estimate. We've seen them as high as $30 million, and we've seen them as low as $3 million. But $20 million is a composite estimate. But you have to keep in mind that that includes your car barns, your maintenance facilities, and these other core infrastructure items. So as the system is expanded, in theory, the mileage is going to cost less, in theory. And we're actually in the process of starting to begin to evaluate technologies. We're even looking at compressed natural gas. We're looking at electromagnetic technology that does not use an overhead wire. We are going to run this through the ringer and make sure that we have the best, most technologically advanced recommendation for you, and also how it relates to connecting to the hub. And of course, there's going to be a public meeting that's coming up sometime in January, February for the hub, and there'll be further recommendations coming down the pike to us. But I wanted to just emphasize, we want you involved in the process. Remember the history of how this came about. You know, this was professional advice that suggested that we use this mode of travel because it is fixed. It does not have, it's a complete paradigm shift between us talking about buses that have no defined route and us as a community saying we are committed to building this thing for the future versus trying to deal with the route changes that people have incurred over the years. So, do you have any questions? And I just want to say it's just important that you get involved in the process. We don't want to show up and recommend things that are going to be debated.
Questions or comments for Jeff while he's here? Yeah, Pete.
I think perhaps Jeff and the other speaker missed the point of what I said last time. And I'm going to say it one more time, or two more times, as I generally, or three more times, as I generally do. This is really not about whether we have a good transit system downtown. This is really about what's the long-term best for the people that live in Oklahoma City. When a year ago, 2 years ago, we had to fight for like $40,000 to get enough money to put people on buses that need those buses to go back and forth to work, and it was like pulling teeth to get it done. And yet we're willing to drop $120 million on a system that will make it easy for people to get from point A to point B, point A being a block from point B or 2 blocks from point B. We'll spend $120 million on that, and we'll leave people standing at bus stops that need the job, that it's important to them. We'll just totally ignore that. I drive by a bus stop every day that's not sheltered. There must be 7, 8 people there almost all the time. We don't have a conscience about that. We just let that go. Nobody around here is talking about that. And yet we're willing to talk about spending $100 million getting this young guy who could walk the block that he's going to have to walk to go from point A to point B. We're willing to spend $120 million moving him. That's my point. That's my point. My point is, I think we ought to move people around downtown. I think that'd be a great deal. I think that'd be a great deal. I just wonder whether or not our priorities are not misplaced. Every study I've seen, Jeff, you've seen 4 million studies for every one I've seen, but every one that I've seen says before you start the system, before you start really investing in a transit system, you ought to have a good metropolitan bus system. And despite Rick's best efforts, and I think he's done a great job, and anything except the comment I made about his tie last week, everything else, I think you couldn't ask for anybody to do a better job than he's done. With the money he has, but he doesn't have enough money to make it work. And yet we're just going to run down this like lemmings off the cliff and dump this money into a system that's 5 or 6 miles long, and it's to provide a service for people that aren't even here yet. When I've got people freezing their tush off at 74th and Santa Fe that use the bus system to get back and forth to work, and we can't. No, there's nobody. When we did the bus system, there were several people down here, poor people, that needed the bus system to get back and forth to work on, and we were able to scrounge up $40,000 and improve the system. Nobody speaks for those people. Who speaks for them now? We're speaking for a system that costs, as you said, an average of $20 million a mile, and the idea that it's going to get cheaper in the future. I want to know what you're smoking. I don't know what gets cheaper in the future. I haven't seen that yet.
Mr. White, that's not very kind.
It's not very kind from my standpoint for you to advocate for a system that serves a select group of people. They're not here yet.
Now, I want an opportunity to rebut.
In deference to people that need a bus system to get back and forth to work. That's where I'm coming from.
Mr. White, I want an opportunity to rebut.
You had 30 minutes to rebut it.
Well, you made your comment. I'm going to make mine, sir.
Shoot.
You will find no greater advocate than myself or any of the volunteers for transit in this community. You will find no greater advocacy. I served on the board of Alliance for Public Transit, which tends to support more bus-oriented technology and any other technology out there. But we wanted transit in maps. The problem with maps, it is not designed to handle ongoing operational costs. And it also has set a legacy in which we build things that are permanent. They are meaningful. They last a long time. 30 years. We didn't build that library to sit there and all of a sudden decide to move it. Bus reform is going to take hard choices. It's going to take either telling people we can provide Class A service in a narrow area, in a small circle, in the most needy parts of the city, and tell people you aren't going to get good bus service if you live outside of this ring. Okay? Now that's the first part. It's going to take...
But you're going to get really great service if you live downtown. That's my point. That's my point. You've got this thing, I can put my thumb over a map, and you're going to have a service that comes by every 8 seconds to save you from walking a block. And I've got people that live at I-240, that work at I-240 in Santa Fe, that can't get back and forth to work without spending 30 minutes freezing their tush off. We're just on two different wavelengths with regard to this. We could argue this forever, but we're on two different wavelengths.
No, wait a minute.
I understand.
Wait a minute.
If we had all the money in the world, I would be 100% in favor of a $20 million mile, 5 mile long system that's going to be built where we think it ought to be built today, that doesn't even hook to the transit system we've got, that's not even designed to hook to the hub that we're trying to. That'd be all great if we had all the money in the world. The fact is, we don't have all the money in the world. And I am concerned that where we're spending the money is improper.
Mr. White, I'm going to finish. Look, we can build bus shelters with MAPS money. That's permanent. And there's very little operating costs associated with that. But in terms of running more buses with MAPS money, that is not possible without some other funding mechanism or you taking funds away from some other needed city program to fund ongoing operations. It's that simple. The supporters that supported MAPS wanted transit involved. The polling reflected that. And then the polling continued to reflect, thank you very much. The polling continued to reflect, I'm sorry, I was losing my voice. The public was educated on what they voted on. They did not go into this, no, wait a minute, I saw the numbers, and they did not go into this knowing that, expecting to have Class A bus service around the city or commuter rail to Edmond or Norman. This was portrayed as a start to a regional system. It is the last mile of that system. It connects to the hub and it distributes and picks up people for that future system. Now, we would love to stretch it as far out as we can go, but it costs a lot of money to do that. And again, the difference between the buses and streetcar is its permanency. Now, we have to think, but I'm not telling you stupid, that you're stupid. I'm telling you that we have a philosophical argument going on here when I would rather have a technical argument, and the technical argument is that the voters voted for this, they support it, they knew what they were voting for, now we need to build it.
Jeff, thanks. I'm going to let Pete finish up and then...
Jeff, we're on two different wavelengths about that also. I'm not sure the voters did understand what they were voting for.
Well, part of the reason I let that go on so long was neither one of you are necessarily wrong, but we are talking about a capital expense and an operational expense. And Pete, as you know, this council is very sensitive to the needs of the people that ride the buses, and we would all like to have a better bus system, and hopefully we'll come up with a funding source long term to address the problems. I don't know that we'll ever have a bus system that we're all proud of for 620 square miles, but there's no question we need to do better than we're doing now. Sam, you want to wrap it up?
Mayor, in the 6 years I've been on the council with Pete, there's been no stronger advocate for public transit than Pete, and it's more than bus. And I just hate to see this thing get to a place where Pete gets cast in some way as an adversary to a part of a comprehensive transit system. I'm a proponent of the downtown streetcar system, voted for it, have been, continue to be. But I think what I hope was heard last week with the discussion and Pete's comments is with the downtown streetcar system, fixed system that we're going to have, that we really listen closely, not to any fixed route that Pete may have in mind or that I have. I don't think that's our role. But the point that Pete made to the council and the public last week was, for me, was we have to really understand the importance of the connectivity of this streetcar system. If we're just talking about a circular route that goes nowhere but downtown, we're all losing the big picture. And what Pete did for me was understand that we have to stretch ourselves further in the time that we have left to plan this transit system. Really understand the connectivity of what we do lay down in fixed tracks, the connectivity to our hub system, the connectivity to our existing public bus system, and the connectivity to our future commuter rail system. The importance of what we do lay down and get fixed in the way of track really speak to and address the connectivity of a larger transit system than what I'm afraid could happen, and that is that Pete keeps speaking to, a circular system that goes to nowhere except feeds downtown. And it's always been envisioned to be more than that, but I don't think we've done the job, not just for Pete, but for the general public, in really understanding the importance of what is laid down really has connectivity to the rail systems that we're going to be developing and need to tie into. So I appreciate that.
Mayor.
Yes, Skip.
And understanding to a large degree both arguments, I agree that we really need to take some serious attention to this issue of where it's going to go. I have been confronted by a lot of people that voted for MAPS that live in the northeast quadrant of Oklahoma City that are wondering whether or not they will ever get a real participation as it relates to the rail system that we are going to implement. And that the possibility of going at least up to the Capitol, knowing that you can't serve everybody in the area, but at least to a quadrant up towards the Capitol, I think should be some of the lines that we need to really seriously look at as reference to people being able to really benefit from the usage of the rail system. And I say that because my ward was one of the wards that had a very high percentage of support for this last MAPS project. And to not have full citizen benefit from some of those projects, I think it's really an insult to those voters that they don't get an opportunity to participate if they don't live downtown. And so I just think that, and maybe we need to, and somebody made the comment about the fact that we are not involved in this process, but we are involved in this process. We understand the makeup of these various committees. We as councilmen were not, and some of us could not serve on each one of these committees. But I think that the work sometimes need to be brought to the council, and maybe we need to have some updated workshops in reference to what's going on, what are some of the lines that's being addressed, so we will have a continued understanding of some of the dialogue that's coming from the various committees. And I think that's probably, something that's healthy for all of us in reference to understanding the overall geographics of where these lines may go. But I really believe that we would better serve all the voters as it relates to some of the extension of this other than just to circle downtown. And I mean, I supported it. I voted for it. I went out and I advocated for it. I took a lot of heat for it. But I don't want to take the backlash of people saying, you did this just for a minute population of people. And so to that extent, I think we ought to be careful about how we look at the extension of the boundaries of this.
Okay. Yeah. Pat?
Yeah, just a quick comment for the citizens in Ward 8 who might see this flow chart. Ward 8 is represented on the MAPS 3 Citizens Advisory Board. Rusty LaForge, listed as vice chairman, is a representative for Ward 8. I just wanted to make sure that people didn't feel that we had, just because we had a water line on 192nd in Portland, we were neglecting Ward 8 representation.
All right, thanks. And I think we'll let that be the final comment of the day. Ready to adjourn? We're adjourned.